And we would like to welcome Kate Lincoln-Goldfinch to the program. She is an immigration attorney, and her firm is down in Austin. And good morning, Kate. How are you?
Hi, good morning. I'm good. Thanks for having me on.
You bet. So the Trump administration is planning to dismiss asylum claims for potentially hundreds of thousands of migrants in the United States, and they will be immediately probably deported as a result. And so there's a couple of different sources that are referencing this situation. But Kate, can you fill everybody in on what, at least up until now, has been the law in the United States with regard to immigrants and asylum?
Certainly. We've had asylum since after World War II, so over 70 years, and we signed on to international treaties and then codified it into our laws in 1980, so 45 years ago. And the definition of asylum requires that somebody be at the bridge seeking entry or already in the United States. So it's right within the definition that the manner of entry does not impact eligibility for asylum. And so for years, before the first Trump administration, people could come to the border and seek asylum and say, I'm afraid of returning to my country, and they could be put through a credible fear interview. But what Trump has done in the first administration was dismantle asylum at the border so that was no longer possible. And now this latest move is an attempt to dismantle asylum, essentially overall. It would just completely eradicate the idea of asylum in this country, and it would impact probably over 1 million people.
So was asylum at the border a thing that was done away with? Obviously, it sounds like before the Biden administration, but did they adhere to that as well?
Yeah, so pretty much they did. So this was done during the first Trump administration, and he tried a few different things. A couple of his moves were struck down by the courts, and then there was the migrant protection protocols that sent people back to Mexico. And then when COVID hit, they closed the border under Title 42. So what happened during the Biden administration is that when the COVID pandemic lifted federally, they lifted Title 42 as it applied to minors, and that's when we saw a bunch of kids coming in alone, which was not a great policy either. Mm-hmm. And then the Biden administration really grappled with how to process asylum seekers in a legal and orderly way, and they came up with things like the CBP One app, where people could apply and wait for their turn. And hundreds of thousands of people did that. They applied for asylum legally, and they didn't come to the border until they had their appointment and their backgrounds had been checked. And those have been the folks who the Trump administration in this second round have gone after primarily, which has been really shocking, honestly, because these are all people who have fled persecution and have done things the right way. They entered with admission, they've gone to their court hearings, and these are the families that are being picked up and separated. This is the stuff that we're seeing on the news. And so this latest announcement just from yesterday is the Trump administration saying we're going after essentially everyone who is an asylum seeker in this country for deportation. I don't think that this will be allowed by the courts because it's in direct violation of the statute that Congress passed.
Now, Kate, you handle cases, I assume, and what are you telling your clients with regard to all of this?
This part has been really hard. I work with immigrants, and my clients are really, really scared. They feel terrible. I work with people who are in the process of getting legal status, so they all have an avenue for becoming legal in this country. And yet, 2 weeks ago, 14 of my clients in a legal process were picked up and separated from their families, and they're currently in detention. So, what the conversations that we're having as advocates is helping people understand their rights if they encounter law enforcement. And then, frankly, we've just had to pivot our practice to do more detention work so that when people get detained, we work on fighting for them and getting them out on bond. That's our main focus right now, and trying our best to help the families understand what's happening and what the timeline might look like. But people are really, really desperate because mothers and fathers are just being taken away without notice from their families, and the kids are struggling to support themselves. There's so much trauma happening. And again, these are people who have no criminal history, and they've only tried to immigrate legally. They're doing a legal process. And that's why I think everybody needs to know that when the Trump administration says that they're only going after criminals, or they're all for legal immigration but not illegal immigration, and that is not accurate whatsoever based on their policies and their actions.
Well, Kate, is there a path to citizenship anymore in the United States? I mean, it sounds pretty grim at the moment.
Yeah, a lot of it's being whittled away, that's for certain. But the main ways that people immigrate in this country are through employment, through family relationships, and some through humanitarian cases like being crime victims or trafficking victims. Those are all programs that were also passed by Congress. They're statutory. And so the president can't just change those policies through executive order. So people are still getting green cards through those main ways, but the Trump administration is definitely attempting to make it harder. So they're applying more scrutiny to cases. There are more delays. There's more hurdles to go over. So it's a lot harder to immigrate than it ever has been before, but there still are legal avenues. And, my hope is that the Trump administration realizes that the American public is not for what they're doing right now. I mean, similar to the summer of 2018 when we saw those family separations at the border and there was a public outcry. I think we're going to see that this summer about the family separations in the interior. And I hope that the Trump administration gets the message that this isn't what his supporters voted for, and that they slow down a little bit and, pause on these aggressive actions against, hardworking people.
And Kate, if someone out there is listening to us and has a loved one who needs a solution, who is kind of in the limbo stage, what would you advise?
Definitely the first thing is a consultation with an immigration attorney, not with a notary or a forms preparer or something like that. There's a lot of people out there who, are taking advantage right now, so going to a licensed attorney is really important. And then in that consultation, the attorney should help you understand whether you're eligible for any legal status, what that timeline would look like, what the cost would be, and then how to protect yourself in the meantime. For example, we have a safety planning packet that we give people that contains a caregiver authorization for the children if somebody gets picked up, and things like that. So it's how do I protect myself now, and what are my options for the future?
All right. Well, thank you so much. We've been speaking this morning to Kate Lincoln-Goldfinch, and she is an immigration attorney out of Austin. She is the owner and CEO of the Lincoln-Goldfinch law firm in Austin. Thank you, Kate.
Thanks for having me on. Have a great day.